Greetings, welcome to the Antisocial Podcast, episode, I don't know what number episode this is. I've stopped saying the number of the episode quite a while ago because, well, I just record these all over the shop whenever I've got some time and, the order kind of gets thrown out of whack. So no idea what episode this will be, but this one is quite a good one, actually. It's an old friend of mine, which I'll touch on a bit because I feel extremely guilty and horrible, but I'll tell you why in a sec. But the guest this week is Sinclair Newey, and Sinclair's from Brisbane, lives in Brisbane, and was in the band that I played in before joining Lord. The band was called Sedition, and Sinclair's baby. It's his band and writes the majority of the music, or if not all of the music, and released a couple of albums locally and some really good stuff. Very very Iron Maiden and Queensryche sort of stuff. And I was in the band for a very short period of time before joining Lord. And after I moved to Sydney about 10 years ago, I didn't really keep in a great deal of contact with him and a number of other people up in Brisbane, just not for any particular reason, but I think everyone just got busy and distracted and caught up in their own worlds, and that was it. And a few years ago, I remember somebody making a comment in passing that Sinclair wasn't well, but there wasn't a lot of detail as to what had happened or anything like that. And at that point in time, I don't know what was going on in my own life. Not that I would make any excuses, but I just remember not registering as anything serious in my head that I needed to say anything at all or reach out or anything of the sort. And I've definitely spoken to him over the years on and off. But and the other thing is, it's funny these days with social media and whatnot. I think as soon as somebody's not on social media or not on it much, I think at least for me, and it's a pretty pathetic thing to say, people tend to drop off the face of the earth, and it's a wonder how any of us communicated before these stupid platforms came into play. So it wasn't until recently, and I saw Sinclair down here in Sydney at a gig. He was in town visiting his sister, I believe, and we had a very, very quick chat. And I can't even remember what we spoke about, but I have this vague feeling that he briefly mentioned something about not feeling well a while back. But whether the conversation got distracted or whether I just wasn't paying attention enough and just a shit person, I've got no idea. But nothing again really registered or made, sounded any alarm bells whatsoever. And it wasn't until a couple of weeks ago that there was a post that showed up on Facebook, and it was Sinclair's sister that had posted a series of pictures and a message about what had happened to him back in December 2013. And he was currently doing a charity ride and was in relation to what had happened to him. So Sinclair will go through all this in the episode, and I think it's like any of my guests. If I attempt to try and explain the story or whatnot, I never do it justice. But Sinclair went through a double lung transplant, and went through an absolute horrible ordeal where he almost died, and at one point wanted to die himself, and just an absolutely incredible story of somebody that had a very slim chance of survival but got through it and now is doing extremely well. And he's gone through this thing now of raising money for charity to help fund further research and awareness and whatnot around the topic, and doing his thing to give back to what's for the people and what's there, to trying to give back to everything that was given to him to keep him alive. And I'll have all the links and things that we speak about in the notes on antisocial.net, so you can go over there and have a look. I think by the time this episode goes up, there might only be a little bit of time remaining for the current fundraiser that he's involved with. So I'll have the link there. So if it is still running, definitely take consideration to donate. But Sinclair mentions in the episode itself of other things that he thinks people should think about and do to help the overall situation, and I'll leave him to explain it. But I'll also put some links to some of Sedition's music as well. I'll have to ask him where some links are, but I'll have them linked in there because there's some pretty cool stuff. And for various reasons, that band had a lot of bad luck, and from personally within the band, and a lot of tragedy and whatnot, which is not the time and the place to discuss any of that. But I think just that the band could have done some really great things, and unfortunately a lot of circumstances outside of their control just stopped it from happening. And it's funny, we didn't even touch on it, so I might even talk to him later on down the track about that and get his thoughts on it all. But I'll put some links in there because I think a lot of you will probably enjoy the music, and I'm sure Sinclair's probably got some CDs that he's got there as well. So I'll find out whether he's got any available. Anyway, enough rambling. I really hope you enjoy this one. It's a little bit lengthy. It's not as bad as some of the ones in the past, but get comfortable. It's a fantastic story, and I ask a lot of silly questions along the way. But there was just a lot of things from an experience point of view that I wanted to try and wrap my head around, and there's no better opportunity than this to ask somebody who's gone through this firsthand to get his thoughts. So I really got something out of this, and I dare say that a lot of you will find it quite interesting. So anyway, I hope you enjoy this one, and I'll talk soon at the end of it. I saw you not too long ago here in Sydney, and I vaguely remember in hindsight that you mentioned like that you weren't well, or you hadn't been well. But I can't remember. I was sort of in a whirlwind at the time, but I can't remember you going into detail at the moment. So I just, in hindsight, I thought, surely I would have remembered all of that. But then I do remember going back even further, and probably around the time somebody had mentioned that you weren't well, but no one went into detail of what had happened. So I just sort of thought, you probably just been, a little bit under the weather and but nothing more of it. And it wasn't until probably a few weeks ago that you shared a post from your sister that you said sort of sparked the whole surge with this with the charity ride and the donations that came in and whatnot. And then I read that and just went, oh shit, far out. I didn't realise how horrible it was and how bad it was for you.
Yeah, and the photos, I think.
Yeah.
When you see, hearing it's one thing, but when you see photos of, someone in a coma and they've got the blood getting sucked out of their body and pumped back in again, people go, holy shit, like, that's...
It adds another element to it, doesn't it? I mean, you as soon as you visualise something, then I think it just adds that added reality to the whole situation. That it's not just something, as you said, it's not just something you've read, but it's in your face now.
I think too there was a photo of me in the hospital bed. I know I was awake, because my eyes are open, but you can just see how many cannulas, catheters, and tubes. Like I had a trachea as well. Like every vein almost had a cannula in it, but then I think I had a central line in my neck, so that goes into a artery or vein in the neck down to your heart. And then I had some dialysis catheters going in. I think it goes in the subclavian artery, and then you got the PICC line that goes into your arm, and that goes to your heart as well. And then there's the stuff you don't see, like down on my wrist. I think I had IVs in my wrist. It's just so there's like heaps of access for them if they need to inject, need to infuse anything. But I also had a cannula in my artery. It basically swapped between each wrist. So I constantly had a catheter in an artery so that they could take arterial blood out and do a blood gas test on it just to see, what your blood's like. And, but anyway, we'll go to the start. Well, I've suffered from cystic fibrosis since I was a kid. I was diagnosed at 7. It sort of, I didn't really have much of a problem with it when I was a kid. And even, into my 20s, it wasn't that much of an issue. Like, I managed it, and I didn't really tell people, or like if someone asked a question, then, you know, I'd answer it. But unless they asked, I wouldn't say anything, because it's sort of, you know, it's a bit weird to just, you know, I don't want to be one of those people that's sort of always, you know, telling people, you know.
Oh, by the way, yeah, this is all the things that are wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, like, it was around probably 2010, my lungs really started to get worse. And I was having a lot of treatments with nebulizers during the day to keep them going. And another problem I was getting was I was coughing up blood now and again. It was sort of this, you know, this sort of cloud over my head all the time, you know, when's it going to happen next? So I sort of, you know, just tried to avoid situations where that might happen. So I think I sort of, I don't know, I wasn't going out as much sort of around that time. But I knew that, because I kept saying to my specialist that, you know, I really think I need a lung transplant. And he was saying that my lung function was too good and that they wouldn't want to do it. But they did send me over to the Prince Charles anyway, which is the hospital that performs transplants in Queensland, so heart and lungs. But I think the Princess Alexandra does the livers and kidneys. Yeah, so I had an interview over there and they said, yeah, your lungs are too good. They sent me back, and I was sort of in training for a lung transplant, because you need to try and put on as much muscle as you can, because you're bedridden for a while. And the old saying, if you don't use it, you lose it. So you sort of have to put on as much muscle as you can, so that once you've had your operation, like, you're going to lose some muscle and you've got to, you know, get out of bed and walk. You've got to get active as soon as you can. So I was sort of in training for that, and I was going up to the gym and working out, and I was actually working out at home, and something popped in my lung and I passed out, and I knew I was coughing up blood as I was losing consciousness, because I could feel, I couldn't see it. It was weird. When I started to lose consciousness, it's sort of like you lose your vision, but I could still hear, and I could sort of feel what was happening. And I knew that I was drowning in my own blood. And I thought, fuck, this is it. Like, this is how, you know, I'm going to die. And you sort of just accept it. And then I lost consciousness. I woke up, got up, I sat up, pulled my mobile phone off the table and called my mum. She came over. They called an ambulance, went to the Mater Hospital. They did a procedure called an embolization, where they thread a catheter up a large vein. They thread a catheter up into your lungs, and it's got to be an artery, and they inject little plastic spheres into your arteries in the lungs to block them off, so that, you know, fingers crossed they'll nail the one that's causing the bleeding. They did that to me. And I've had these procedures before, but I didn't recover from this one. So that was my last memory. So my mum told me after that operation, I went back to the ward, and they're trying to get me up and walking, but my feet were going blue and my lips were going blue. And I've got no memory of this, because I think the oxygen in my blood was so low that my brain was barely ticking over. Like, I was responding to commands, but, you know, nothing. I've got no memory of it. But what I do remember is not being able to breathe, and sort of the memory of this seems like a dream, because you're half hallucinating, because your brain's starving for oxygen. And I just remember just feeling like you're breathing through a really thin straw, like every breath is you're having to force it in. And after, I think, a day and night of this, I just felt totally worn out. And the other thing too is your heart. My heart was beating maybe 180 or just constantly, because your heart's trying to take up the slack of what the lungs are doing. And I think my sister posted this, but she said that, and I remember saying this, I said, just let me die, or just kill me, because, like, leaving me hanging on like this, it's like torture. Like, someone's strangling you. That's what it feels like. So it's like, you know, if I'm going to die, just get it over with. So from there, they put me into a induced coma, And this was at the Mater Hospital, and my specialist told my parents, this is the situation. In the meantime, my specialist called up his old friend, who's a transplant. He's on the transplant team at the Prince Charles Hospital. So he came over. I think it was during the night, actually. So it just shows you how dedicated these doctors are to saving lives. And he just said, yeah, we'll take him. So they took me from the Mater over to the Prince Charles in an ambulance. From there, they put me on a type of life support called ECMO, which is, I can't remember what it stands for, but basically they put two large catheters or tubes up each femoral artery, so that's the large artery that goes into each of your legs, and they thread them up, so one's arterial, one's venous, and they suck blood out of the, I don't know which one they suck the blood out of, but anyway, they suck the blood out, oxygenate, I don't know if that's how you say it, they put oxygen into the blood. The main thing is putting oxygen into the blood, and if you saw that photo, you can see the blood going back into the brighter red colour, that's the return. Yeah, so that then basically takes over from the lungs, and so they were keeping me alive on that sort of life support. And in the meantime, because, I was such an emergency case, they knew they had, because I had been doing the exercise, I knew I had a window of opportunity that they could keep me in the coma for a certain amount of time. I had enough muscle there to sort of sustain me, but it was definitely an emergency. So they called up all the hospitals in Australia and New Zealand, because it's quicker to get organs from New Zealand than it is from Western Australia, shorter distance. And Queensland's the only one that offers this service because the Premier of Queensland has their own jet. It's called the Premier jet. So it was actually Joe Bjelke-Petersen that brought that jet in, and I think part of the reason to justify the cost of it, he said, we'll be able to transport donor organs into Queensland. So the public, wouldn't be too critical of him spending this money on a private jet.
On a private jet, yeah.
Yeah, so, and that's something they continue to this day. And I actually got to meet the pilots, and I think one of them was pretty sure he was the pilot that flew my lungs in. And he says it's the most rewarding part of their job, doing this thing. And they're ready to go, day or night. And even if they've got a senior minister that needs to, I think at the time it was Jeff Senior used to catch it, because I used to fly him out west to go home. Yeah. And they could actually tell the politicians that, no, we can't do it, we've got to go pick up some organs, so you have to stay in Brisbane or whatever. So they put the call out. So for 2 weeks, I was the most critical patient in Australia, and every day the Prince Charles would call the hospital just to remind him, yep, he's still alive, so if anything comes up, send him. And I don't know if you can remember, but it was in the news, there was a girl that got killed jet skiing or something like that down in New South Wales on a lake, I think. They offered me her lungs, but they were too small for me.
Right.
And I think I got another offer, but I can't remember what the problem was with those ones. So every time an offer would come in, that'd actually wake me up. I don't really have a memory of it because when you're in a coma, you're basically hallucinating all the time. So when you're woken up, reality sort of blends into your hallucinations, and it's just crazy. So I've probably got, if I had to think about it, I could remember when they've woken me up. It'll be mixed in with just all kinds of craziness. And actually, this is probably a good point to bring up now. When I first got to the intensive care unit at the Prince Charles, the director of ICU came in to see me, and my girlfriend was there at the time. She was wearing an Iron Maiden T-shirt. And he started asking questions about Iron Maiden, and did I listen to Iron Maiden? She said, yeah, he does. And he likes Iron Maiden. Like, he's actually a metalhead, and I think his favourite band's Scorpions. And he said that helped him sort of form a connection with me, because he didn't know who I was, but knowing that, he sort of had an idea of what my personality would be like. And so he said, knowing that, I think he became a bit of an advocate for me getting transplanted, because there were other doctors there that didn't want to do it. They thought it was too risky. But my specialist back at the Mater was really pushing for it, and some other doctors were too. So it's a bit of 50-50. But anyway, I got an offer, and I did the blood test, and it came back that they weren't a match. But that doctor that I was telling you about, that my specialist went through medical school with, he suspected that the test had been done incorrectly. So he redid it himself, and he said they're a match. But they'd actually woken me up, told me, there's an offer, so you could be going into surgery, and then they say, no, it's not a match. So they then put you back into the coma. And then they woke me back up and said, no, it's actually going to go ahead now. And I remember this because I remember the woman that told me just seemed really upset about it. And but I don't have memory going into the theatre, but anyway, went in, and normally the operation goes for about 4 hours, and mine went for 9.
Shit.
And they had to swap out the surgeons halfway through, and the director of ICU said he was in the theatre when the surgery was going, when it was happening, and he said that this is his way of talking. He says you were trying to die every chance you got or something. So because basically my heart had been struggling for so long that it just stopped. The heart muscle was worn out. So they got the lungs in. The lungs were fine, but now it was my heart had stopped. So they had to put the tubes that had previously been in my femoral artery that were keeping the blood full of oxygen and pumping it back in. They had to pull those out and put them directly into my heart. So after the surgery, they open up your sternum to get the lungs in and your heart's exposed. And they left my chest open for about 5 days. And there's actually a photo of that too, and they stitch a bit of synthetic skin over, but you can see the tubes. Yeah, and Nicole's my girlfriend, she said, you actually see my heart sort of beating underneath this synthetic skin. And, so I was like that for 5 days, and they stitched me back up. I can't remember how soon they woke me up, but I know that the idea is, well, the plan is to get you moving as soon as you can. Because I'd been in a coma, I think, for about a month by this time, I couldn't move at all. Like, I couldn't even lift, my fingers off the bed.
Wow.
So, they'd sort of put you on a program where the physio would come around and she'd say, okay, we'll try and lift your arm. And you try and do it, nothing would happen. So she'd pick it up and just lift enough weight off that you sort of get the movement going. Because when you're in a coma, not only your muscles deteriorate, but the nerves do as well. So the signals can't get through as well as they would normally. And I remember her, when this first started, I think I had it in my head that this would only take a couple of weeks, and she goes, no, it's going to take months. And I was like, oh, man, this sucks. And, and it's just every day it was just a battle. Like, all this random stuff would happen. Like, that's right, my heart went crazy again, and it started beating. Like, my heart rate just kept rising and rising, and so they had to shock it to bring it back down. So I got a defibrillator. And Dad said that my dad was in the ward at this time. They give you a bit of sedation, but you're awake when it happens. And I've got no memory of it because you get amnesia from it. But he said that I had a shocked look on my face after they shocked my heart. My eyes were wide open. So it's actually a shame I can't remember that, because it would have been interesting to know what that's like.
Yeah, far out.
Yeah, and that brought my heart back down. And the goal is to get you standing. So they put you on sort of this tilt bed, like they drag you onto it horizontal and they tilt it up vertical, and you get to feel what the weight on your feet is like. And it's just sort of like that. That'll be one day, then the next day it'll be actually sort of bending your knees a bit and pushing back up. And it's just every day it's a small little improvement over what you did the previous day. So I would have started doing that probably late December, I think. in 2013. So I was transplanted on the 5th of December. Actually, it would have been the middle of December. And then I ended up getting out of hospital in start of February, I think, the next year. So, so I think I was in hospital for about 4 months. Yeah, hard work.
But even like when you left at the end of February, like roughly around then, you wouldn't have been anywhere near 100% by that stage. It's just you're okay enough to at least go home, but I'm sure like you still had a long way to go after that.
Yeah. No, I still needed assistance getting dressed, because if I fell over, I wouldn't be able to get up. I could only walk for short periods of time, and that was part of my continued rehabilitation, was I just walk laps around my parents' house. The other thing too is the medication I had to go back into hospital because I was getting stomach pain from the medication. But over time, once you're over a certain point and you're able to exercise regularly, you improve quite quickly. As long as your diet's good too, you got to get the food in and exercise, and the main thing is your legs. That's why I took up cycling, because it focuses the exercise onto your legs, and the immune suppressants you're on are toxic to your muscles. One of them is a steroid, prednisone, but it's a catabolic steroid. It's not an anabolic steroid, so it makes you weaker. So part of your treatment is actually to push the legs quite hard so that you're able to maintain your mobility and strength and that sort of thing.
You've obviously explained it in a lot more detail than what your sister put up, but I'm lost for words, but I kind of, the way that I look at it is that what you've gone through, very few people ever would go through anything like you have, and the things that you've sort of felt or experienced along the way, no one could even start to comprehend what you go through. Because I'm thinking straight away, like when you said earlier on the piece about, leading up to them putting you in the coma and your body just being absolutely exhausted and in so much pain. And, I think you said just feels like you're being strangled, and getting to the point where mentally you're making that decision already to say, look, that's it. You need to, if I'm going, you need to end it now and just get it over and done with. And for me, I can't even fathom getting to a point mentally like that where you'd even that thought would cross your mind. But that in itself, the thing I can think is next level sort of stuff. It's incredible. Yeah, when
I've heard of people that have had influenza that have been really sick in hospital, and they've said in interviews that if they had died, they wouldn't have cared. They just feel that sick. For me, it was stressing me out, not being able to breathe. It's horrible. Not being, and until you've been, I don't know, I think you have to be strangled or asphyxiated to know what it feels like. But when you can't draw breath, you naturally panic. Or if you've ever come close to drowning, I don't know if you've ever been swimming at the beach and you've just been hammered by waves over and over, and you really start struggling to get to the surface to get breath of air. You do start to panic, and it's it's the way humans have adapted through evolution to stay alive. That panic and adrenaline to do what it takes to get you breathing. But when you can't, and it's just going on for, in my case, a day and a night, I think, where every single breath you're consciously forcing it in, and you can't, and you haven't slept for that long. It's like, I'm over this.
Torture, yeah. And I assume that you probably wouldn't even get to a point mentally where you're even thinking beyond that physical experience that you've got. I think what I'm trying to say is you're not thinking of the ramifications of you not being there anymore. You're just thinking, end whatever the physical experience that's happening to me at that point in time. I assume anyway. It's not, you haven't got enough clarity of mind to go, I don't want to die, or I want to get through this or anything like that. It's just make whatever's physically happening to me stop.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking of transplant because I'd already brought it up and nothing had happened. So I sort of just thought that it wasn't going to happen. But yeah, when your oxygen is that low, your brain isn't really thinking straight.
Yeah.
And not that, wanting to die wasn't thinking straight, but you're not thinking of all the variables and all the possibilities and stuff like that. And that's why they put you in a coma. They know that, with modern medicine, they can keep you alive just so that you don't have to go through all that. It's easier just to put you in a coma or put you out. Yeah, and I think maybe if you were kept alive for that, maybe you never know, you would just give up and die because you're so stressed out from what's going on.
Oh, I'm sure your body would just start to shut down if your mind gets exhausted to such a degree that, because obviously everything's sort of functioning based on signals, and I mean, obviously they've all got to be healthy components, but they've got to run on commands coming from up the top. So if that area of the body's stressed out and exhausted, then I assume that's probably going to have a compound effect moving down the body.
And the other thing too, like when you were saying, just the experience of going through this, that other people, well, just, people in the general public don't get to experiences. I always knew, a transplant would most likely be a part of my life, and, further down the track, but this is, before my transplant. But I never, once you're being kept alive by someone else's organs, you have this strange connection to someone that you've never met. And I really wasn't, I'd never really thought about it until it happened. And I remember when, after my transplant, actually I was crying because it meant that somebody, I'm starting to feel like I could cry now, but someone died and I'm alive, and it's hard to sort of rationalize that, and you feel guilt, I feel guilty about it, but Mum just explained, that person died anyway. It's better that, people were kept alive than them going to waste, those organs going to waste. And since then, I've been corresponding with my donor's mother, and so I think it's also therapeutic for the family to receive letters from people that they don't know, but are sort of, sharing a part of their loved one. And, and not that they're still alive, but a part of them is in someone else. And so she told me a bit about her son, and that he was active. He was a rugby union player, and I think he was going to represent Australian lawn bowls. It was a handwritten letter. I'm pretty sure it was lawn bowls. I don't even know if that's a Commonwealth Games event. Yeah, he was obviously active, and so I sort of, when I write to her, I tell her what sort of how I've been putting these lungs to use. So with my writing and stuff like that. So that stuff he was interested in, maybe carried across to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, from an active point of view, and pushing that that updated component in your body now, the upgrade that you've received. But I was gonna ask you about the donor side of things, because my experience for the most part has just been from whatever you see in a documentary or a movie or something like that. But whether there was any truth to it or not, I just remember somewhere in the past someone saying that donors weren't, well, the person who received the organ wasn't able to make contact with whoever the family was of the person who had died and donated their organs. But obviously you've been able to have access to the family. Is there some sort of program that they have in place for the families of people that have died and passed on their organs, and to wherever those the destination of where those organs turn up? Is there anything that's set up, or is that you just get contact details from the hospital and that's it?
Yeah, it's a federal government program called Donate Life, and there are policies. Like, everything's anonymous. Like, I'm not allowed to know who they are. They're not allowed to know who I am. They're not allowed to know which hospital I was operated at. And I actually just wrote a letter to her recently, and it got rejected because I mentioned this charity I did recently, and because I was the number one fundraiser.
Would have been easy to work out.
Yeah, they Googled they just did a couple of searches, and I was coming out on top in some news stories, and because there was so much publicity about me in particular, so they rejected the card because of that. So I've got to rewrite it and send it back to them.
So they've got to screen the correspondence going each way before it reaches the other person.
Yeah.
It's like it's almost like, I mean, not that it's the best analogy, but it's like, you know, screening letters from people sending stuff in and out of prison or something like that, just to make sure nothing suspicious is being conveyed. Do you know the reason as to why they try and keep it anonymous between both parties?
There'll be ethical guidelines when it comes to organ donation, so that there's no favoritism, or maybe so they can limit. I don't know what scenarios that they're trying to avoid, but yeah, that's a good question. It's got to be because if one party didn't want to know who, you know, what had happened, they just sort of wanted to grieve in their own way, or even if the recipient sort of didn't feel comfortable corresponding with the donor. Maybe it's a way of protecting the people involved. Having
that third party there just to be that shield in case there is that reluctance to make contact, instead of you having to, like, if it was you that didn't want to have to go through that awkwardness of rejecting correspondence from the donor's family, you know, there's somebody else there in place that can mitigate that and sort of take the brunt of that and go through that process instead of putting all that pressure on you, I guess. Yeah. Fair enough. It's good to know that in a way, like, regardless of not being able to give the finer details and sort of identify who you both are and whatnot, that you're still able to pass messages backwards and forwards, and at least they've got some peace of mind knowing that it's gone somewhere that's having a positive impact, and you're able to sort of fulfill a bit of peace of mind on your side to let that family know as well. So there's still obviously huge benefit of that program in place. Oh yeah, for sure. And it's also, you know, I'm constantly thinking how lucky I am that I'm an Australian resident, born in Australia, because you know, if I was in the United States, I'd be a dead man. Can you give me an example of why? Like, what's the main? I mean, obviously we've got like the healthcare system, and obviously that supports to a degree. But what's the main difference? Just the waiting list in the US, or just not having a? No, it's the cost. It's Medicare over in America. I should also mention too the survival rates. In America, the mean survival rate for lung transplant is 2 years. The hospital where I received my transplant, their mean is 10 years. And once you get to 10 years, then you are able to be retransplanted if you need it. So I think because of Medicare, well, first of all, the cost is paid by Medicare. In America, and I see it now and again, people with CF have to do fundraisers because they have to raise the money themselves and pay for it, because, you know, private health insurance isn't going to cover someone with a chronic health condition. So they've got to pay for it themselves. And so there's that cost, which, you know, if you can't raise the money, you know, you're not going to get the operation and you'll die. But then I think too, because of socialised healthcare, there's a program in place for constant review of the patient to make sure that they're okay. In America, you can have your transplant, but then you don't really get the follow-up, and you don't get the follow-up care. So if something goes wrong, if you start going through rejection or you get a bad infection, then that can kill you. So it's situations like that bring their statistics down to only 2 years, whereas in Australia, you know, if I was to get sick, I'll get hospital care, no questions asked. And because I've had a transplant, they'll keep close eye on me. And actually, can you remember when you were doing that Dry July and oh yeah, you know, and you were raising money for the PA hospital? That would and I donated, and I said, yeah, I'm in the PA hospital at the moment. Well, I probably just went, oh yeah, you're working there, or you just gone to visit someone. not even putting two and two together at all. That would have been, well, no, that would have made sense because that would have been 2014.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I was in there because I was getting a fundoplication done on my stomach to take away the risk of getting reflux from your stomach. So that operation is done because statistically you're less likely to get a type of complication down the track with your lungs. Whereas in America, I doubt they would perform that operation, and that would be another thing you'd have to pay for.
Raise money for.
Yeah, so it's all those sort of things. You know, I'd hate to think how much money has been spent on me, but I know it's a lot. So it's a constant thought in my head how lucky, you know, we are to have Medicare, you know, the safety net for all of us.
I'm just, when you mentioned about, you know, the scenario of somebody in the States having to go through this and then go through, you know, trying to raise money, you can't even fathom being in that situation. Like if they're in the same situation you were, where, you know, you're lying in that bed before they put you in the coma and they're like, oh, hang on, we need to go and start raising some money. Like, it's not exactly that you've got time on your side. You're not going to sit there, you know, trying to draw breath while people try and scrape together money and find a way to keep you going. And that's probably why a lot of people just don't even get to that stage of having the money to do the operation. So, geez, it's incredible.
I think every day you spend in ICU costs $7,000. So that gives you an idea. You would have to be raising $7,000 every day.
Yeah.
Which, you know, unless you're, I don't know, really famous, it just won't happen.
No.
Because I've read other stories about there was some woman and her child got some weird illness and she was in ICU and they couldn't diagnose what was wrong with her, and she was just aware of how much money it was costing every day, and just saying like how lucky it was that, you know, they were able to keep her daughter alive till they figured out, you know, what was wrong with her. Because in the States, you know, you never know, they might say, no, your insurance, you know, doesn't cover this.
Yeah.
And then people just die.
Must be incredible. I mean, obviously absolutely horrific for the person and the family to go through all that, but it must be just, well, not just as bad, but almost as bad for the people that work in the hospitals that have to make those decisions. And, you know, because, you know, from the top end, from a business point of view, they can't keep these people in there. So I don't even know how, from a conscious point of view, that people would go through. And in the States, I guess, just, you know, you're looking at a larger volume of people, so you'd see a lot more of these scenarios popping up, and they just just be some difficult decisions to make on a daily basis in those situations. But
I never thought of it from that perspective. But the people in the offices, the management that makes these decisions, they're not the ones on the front line that will have to say, well, no, we're not going to help you, so go away and die.
Yeah,
that's the reality of those decisions.
But then you're gonna get that nurse or that doctor who's down on the front line, and they're the ones that have got to pass that information on and deal with, you know, whatever reaction's going to come out of that as well. So the person who's sort of sitting up in the office won't be exposed to that. They're the ones that are making that decision. Yeah, that's it's intense. So I mean, just going back to what you said, then obviously extremely lucky to be a citizen and be in Australia and have that healthcare system there. Just I mean, it's saved your life.
Yeah, sure did. So when it comes to the election, and you've got your Prime Minister saying he wants to privatise Medicare, to just think about that and think, okay, what if I get sick down the track?
Yeah,
you know?
I'll be thinking about you for the rest of my life now, whenever it comes into conversation. Yeah.
And I mean, it's something we're all already paying for. There's no reason to privatise it.
Absolutely,
we're all paying for it with our taxes. So
it's exactly right.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like, you know, it's whether this is the best comparison, but it's like we pay taxes for things like, you know, the dole, you know, and supporting people that are unemployed, but, you know, we don't pay it with the vision that we will at some stage in our life be unemployed and need that support, but we pay it anyway. So there's enough money in the kitty for those who do go through that, and then in the event that we might be in that situation as well. So you're not paying it just with the expectation that, you know, there's 26 million people in the country and they're all paying, you know, a chunk of money that goes to that particular, situation or scenario. It's, you know, it's like insurance. You know, you're paying insurance. You might never need to use it, but you pay it anyway for peace of mind. And that pool of money's there so that when shit does go wrong, you might have only paid a small amount of money over a period of time, but the pool of money is there for you to access, and it's because everyone's chipped in to help each other out. So yeah, it's a good system, and hopefully it stays there for at least one very good example that you've unfortunately had to go through to pass on that message as well. One other question I was going to ask, and I'll touch on sort of all the charity stuff as well, because I'm going to put a bunch of links for people to go and check it out. And the other thing I was going to mention about all these experiences that you've had that are sort of one-off things, or things that most people will never experience, the whole coma thing. And you touched on it before about having sort of coming in and out of, well, sort of a consciousness, you know, sort of thing, and waking up, but having a lot of sort of hallucinations and whatnot. You mentioned that you're basically in a coma for a month. Is that correct overall?
Yeah, I think it was about 4 weeks, because I think there was like the 2 weeks before my transplant, or maybe it was 3 weeks. I'm not sure, but let's just say it was about 4 weeks, and a period of that was before the transplant, and a period of that was post-transplant.
I guess the question that I've got, and it's probably a very hard thing to even try and comprehend to answer, but I guess, well, in a very blunt way, what the hell is it like being in a coma?
Well, for me, it wasn't fun. You've probably heard about this book I think it was called Proof of Heaven. There was some doctor or scientist that was in a coma. He got a bacterial infection. He was in an induced coma for a while, and the hallucinations he considered proof that there was an afterlife, which is crazy coming from someone that should be scientifically minded. But I think the best way to describe it, it's like, imagine if your dreams were reality, and I think because you are in a coma, your brain's being kept active by the dreams that you're having. But because you've got no stimulation from being conscious, your memory perceives the dreams and stores them in your memory as if it really happened. So when I woke up, I was really confused about what had happened, because I was in my hallucination. I was taken all across the world and put in all sorts of situations. They all sort of came back to my health, like what was going on in the real world, like particularly with the whole transplant thing and coming so close to death. There was a constant thing where people were trying to kill me. So I had this idea that the nurses were trying to drain me of my blood to, I don't know, sell to the Red Cross or something. So I'd be lying in bed, and nurses would be poking around, and they're waiting for me to, in my head, they're waiting for me to go to sleep so they can sneak in and, start sucking the blood out of me. So I didn't want to go to sleep, and I'm like looking at all of them scowling, because I couldn't talk at this point. Yeah. And I know that I must have had my eyes open at that point, because the nurses I saw in those dreams, and later once I was awake, I remember them in real life. Right. Yeah, I have a really funny hallucination. Actually, I'll sort of tell you the whole thing so it explains how I ended up in America. But because I'd requested that, these doctors to just end my life, my dad had took it upon himself to fulfill that request. So he flew me over to California and paid some... No, I think it was actually to California. Travelled down to Mexico so he could pay some Mexicans to just shoot me in the head. And... it's crazy. But I can remember this like it actually happened. Wow. Like that's That's how your brain stored it. And people do. They suffer post-traumatic stress disorder after being in comas because they can't tell the difference what was real, what was reality. And it's stressful because it's like it really happened to you. And even now, still, when I'm driving around, sometimes I'll see certain things that jog my memory, and I'll get this, like, fear and adrenaline rush, and, you know, this intense fear because, something bad's going to happen. But anyway, so I'm in Mexico. So they shot me in the head, but the bullet bounced off my skull, and I ended up in hospital in America, and they fixed me up. But then this one night, basically, like, once all the visitors went, all the nurses dimmed the lights down, and so a nurse would walk past, and then she'd come back, and she's wearing a dominatrix outfit, and she's looking at me, and I'm like, okay. And then another nurse comes up, and she sets his video camera up on a tripod pointing at my bed. And I'm like, what the fuck is she putting that there for? And all of a sudden, all the nurses are wearing bondage gear and strap-ons, and someone brings out this massive dildo on a trolley. And, yeah, and I'm like, oh, man, I know what's going down here. And in my dreams, I was saying, don't you dare fucking do this. I was going, if you do this, I'm going to get you all. And anyway, they rolled me onto my front and put the dildo to work, and they were filming it. And in my head, they were streaming this on the internet. I was like, and the whole time I'm going, you know, fuck you. And then I don't know how, but I ended up calling the cops, and it was a big thing on the news, and they all got arrested, and I uncovered this dirty fucking hospital ward where they were raping their patients. And so that's the sort of stuff that was going on. And I remember it like it really happened. So that's probably the more crazy one that I had.
Wow. It's all I'm thinking when you're telling me that is, shit, you had a month of this.
Yeah.
These ridiculous over the top, and probably, I mean, crazy adventures, but like, it just, not that they were exciting and fun or anything like that. I mean, no doubt it would have been absolutely mentally draining for you, but did it feel like that you were out for a month? Did you have a concept of time while you were out, or it just sort of went really quickly, or you just don't know?
Well, when I woke up, like, I'd bite my nails, so they're usually really short, and they'd grown really long, so that was like, wow, I've got long nails now. And then the other thing too is people were telling me stuff that had happened while, like, I think Nelson Mandela had died, and Paul Walker from Fast and the Furious had died. And, like, Nicole goes, yeah, Paul Walker died while you're out, and she said that he died in a car crash, and I just thought, I'm hallucinating again because, you know, Fast and Furious. So I sort of ignored that. And then once I was out of hospital, then I was like, what? That really happened? So stuff like that. Yeah. And another thing too is her dog. Well, it was her dog, but we both, both of our dog, like, he had died while I'd been in a coma. So that was upsetting to know that had happened. And yeah, just changes like that, like, this dog I'll never see again now, and yeah. I'm sure there's other stuff, but those are the main things that sort of come to mind.
So, but did it feel like? I mean, obviously not having the concept of time, but sort of, and it's obviously pretty difficult to try and comprehend. But did it feel like that period of time went quickly, or you've got no way of even sort of measuring it at all?
Yeah. To tell the truth, it probably seems like it was a month's worth, but what happened in my memories was probably like a year's worth of actual events.
Yeah, right.
Because, you know, I spent time in England. Yeah, and I think this had to do with the Iron Maiden thing, because part of the director of ICU was playing Seventh Son of a Seventh Son just on repeat, because that's my favourite album. Just as a stimulation thing for my brain, and that was getting in there because I had a hallucination. I was in in a hospital in England, and I'd requested that Iron Maiden be played on a radio station. And anyway, everyone in England was playing this one radio station, so there was an ambient Iron Maiden in the background of the world. You could be walking down the street and all you'd hear is Iron Maiden playing. And I remember thinking, man, that's awesome. Like, they listened to my request. Like, not only played on the radio station, but somehow everyone in the country's playing it.
I guess in that sense, it probably was quite exhausting, because it did feel like you were away. You were gone for such a lengthy period of time, like longer than what reality actually was. So.
Yeah, I remember asking my mum, because I had a dream that I was in a movie. Like I was, I don't know how, but I got into a movie, and I can't remember who. It was like a superhero movie, like Batman or something like that. I was saying, was I in this movie? And she was saying, no, and just looking at me like I'm crazy. But I thought it really happened. I was
just
like,
that vivid. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
That cool. It happened.
You've been busy while you've been lying in bed. Everyone's sorting out things for you, getting you movies. Yep, sounds good. I guess now, and you're a little while past everything that's happened. You mentioned sort of when you're out and about, you might see something that triggers a thought from that time. But do you find that a lot of that stuff sort of comes back in waves when you sleep? Like I don't know if you regularly dream. I know some people, well, I think everybody dreams, but some people just don't consciously remember it. But do you pick up any of that sort of stuff, or does anything linger?
No. Not in my dreams. And I did have trouble waking up. I actually pissed the bed one night because I couldn't wake up.
Wow.
To go to the toilet. But that sort of settled down. Yeah, like an example of sort of what happens is in my hallucinations when I spent time in America, I had this obsession with eating and drinking food, because the whole time you're in a coma, they're keeping you alive with IV nutrients, but no food's going into your mouth or stomach. So I think you end up having this craving to eat or drink and taste stuff. So that was a constant theme to my hallucination of me being able to drink some flavoured milk. And so I'm in America, and my sister owned a cafe. Sort of like a roadside diner, and it sort of had that American, that sort of 1950s style writing on it. So if I see that, or any sort of American diner sort of situation, that will trigger it, and I'll just get this shit. I forgot to tell you what happened in that diner was then a gang of Mexicans rocked up because they didn't finish the job of fucking shooting them in the head, so they came back to finish the job. So they got Tommy guns and they're just shooting the whole place up. My sister just gets wasted and the whole place is torn apart. And I get away, of course. And so it's like this constant, I don't know, threat of death in my hallucinations, people trying to kill me. So if you can imagine someone was trying to kill you, the fear you'd felt and the fear you would feel, that's what I feel when, if I see something that triggers that.
Triggers one of those.
Yeah,
I was going to say memories, but I guess they are. They I mean, even though it wasn't reality, it's still a memory of some sort, isn't it?
Yeah.
I can only try and compare it to when I just have really ridiculous, crazy dreams, or when I might have a very brief case of where I think I might be lucid dreaming or something like that. And that's the only sort of bearing I've got as far as trying to comprehend what you've gone through. So it's Yep.
Do you find that you remember your dreams when you wake up?
Yeah. And not all of them. And it's funny because I'll wake up and know that I've had at least 4 or 5 distinctive dreams, and I'll be able to recall probably 3 of them, and then I get a sort of feel or a sense or even like a color or some sort of shade of what those other dreams were, even though I've got no idea what they were specifically, or where I was or what was going on or whether I was even there or not. I get this sort of feeling about the other ones, and it might just be like a particular scent or sense or something like that might trigger it off later on. But I just got no recollection whatsoever of what they are apart from a feeling. But and the other times you sort of wake up, and for that first probably 30 seconds of becoming awake again, you can remember everything and you recalling everything, but within about 30 seconds it's gone, and it's just disappeared, and you might have that slight feeling of what potentially it was, but you're trying to grasp onto whatever memory of that dream was there, and it's just long gone. So it's fascinating. I've got a book on lucid dreaming that I haven't read yet, because I've been sort of interested in that sort of stuff, and even just trying to get an understanding of what all these dream states are like, and not that I'm terribly interested in a lot of woo-woo kind of stuff, but it's just interesting to see how the mind works and where we pull the data from. We watch things and read stuff and experience things, and then we sort of jumble them all together when we're passed out at night, and we come up with these crazy adventures and stories and whatnot, and why some people have. My fiance Jess, she went through a period for a long period of time where she just had the most violent and aggressive dreams that you could possibly have, and just that was all. It was just a common theme no matter what, but then after a while they disappeared. So, but I think that had a lot to do with what was going on just in everyday life that was stressing her out, and it sort of just translated into what happened when she went to sleep. But it's just interesting how some people have particular themes or common themes that keep running through each time they sleep, and other people are just all over the shop. And what you were saying about Jess reminds me of the inspiration for the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, because it was based off I think a Korean guy in real life who he just had terrible nightmares when he went to sleep. He was convinced someone was trying to kill him in his dreams, so he just started, eating coffee beans and doing whatever he could to stay awake. He ended up dying, I think, because of some sleep deprivation. It's incredible.
But that was Wes Craven's inspiration for.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I didn't know
making that movie.
Yeah, and I guess, for some people, I could understand that. I think for Jess, it was a discomfort enough to be stressful, but not absolutely,
debilitating.
Yeah, that's the word, debilitating, that it was having such a dramatic impact on her mentally and physically and whatnot. So it wasn't a really extreme level, but it was enough that it was causing some stress in her life, and I think she was just going through a stressful period in her life anyway. So I think just her body sort of getting through it and trying to tackle it and manage it all was to start spewing out all these crazy scenarios and situations in her dreams. But after a while, once all the sort of things in her everyday life had started to change and settle down, then she didn't have those dreams anymore. But it's quite fascinating. That's why I'm just, even when you mentioned like you're pretty much in a coma for a month, I'm just thinking, how does that even, what does that look like, and how does that even feel? Because you see in the movies, and it's like, that the person's in a coma, but they're still awake and they can hear everything and they know what's going on, and people can still talk to them even though they're not responding, and it's sort of like they're trapped and they're totally conscious. And then there's other scenarios it's all sort of stuff in the movies. But so I've always just been fascinated, and especially now, talking to you, and you've got a first-hand experience of going through it.
Yeah, what happens in the real world does filter through into those hallucinations, and when you're even going in and out of it, because they'd sort of back off on the medication to bring you out of it and wake you up a bit. And I can remember those periods because I asked my girlfriend, did this really happen? And she goes, yeah, I can remember that. But everything around that, she goes, no, that didn't happen. So there's these brief instances where, my eyes were open and information got in, but then the dream sort of state envelops that, and you sort of got a mix, and you got to do a bit of deciphering too, and you got to talk to people and find out what really happened and what didn't happen. And it's safe to say most of the real crazy stuff didn't happen, and that's why this book this guy wrote such. I actually thought about writing a book called Proof of, Hallucinations or something, like a sort of a counter book to his one, give him a dose of reality.
Yeah, why not?
Just some, objectives. Because I could, list, I don't know how, I think he was only under for a week or two maybe, but apparently he said like he was like a droplet of water on a butterfly's wings flying through the universe or something like that.
Yeah, right. A bit of a psychedelic adventure.
Yeah, and he thinks that was him, I don't know, in heaven.
Yeah.
But no, you're just dreaming.
Yeah, and I guess, I don't know I don't know this guy, but I wonder what his background and upbringing was. And, he might not have been a religious person, but he might have been in an area where there was a lot of religious people or religious schooling or something like that, where he might not have been terribly interested, but it had enough of an underlying, impact mentally to him so that it's caught up with him when he's been in this state. And it's just been, he hasn't been conscious of it, but it's resurfaced, and now he's pieced it all together and come up with this theory now he's stuck with. But hey man, I think
it's rationalization. It's the only way he can rationalize what he remembers. Whereas I find it quite easy to understand that it's just when you're given drugs that make you go unconscious, you're going to see some trippy shit.
I think even if you didn't go down that path and do a counter book to his, I think even just putting together like a short collection of stories just from your month in another world might pick up quite a bit of interest from other people. So I think people will get a laugh, especially that one with the dominatrix nurses. I think that's that one in itself will make it a bestseller.
Yeah. I won't ever forget that. That one.
Yeah, that's crazy. Oh, well, I won't keep you too much longer, but do you want to just mention briefly about the whole writing thing? And you spoke about it a bit before and getting into that, and it's obviously been a massive help to try and get the lower part of your body and your legs sort of up to speed and physically in a satisfactory condition. But obviously that's translated into a charity ride, which you've done, but you're still raising money for that at the moment? Yeah,
I think they're keeping it. You can still donate to the end of March.
Okay.
So right. It's a month after the event.
Okay. So I'll put the link up anyway so people can go and check that out. But I guess after that, what's
even if, donating's not their thing, the other side of it is just the awareness and becoming an organ donor, because in Australia, the donor rates are lower than other countries in the world, and in particular, Spain's a good example. But, just even signing on with Donate Life and or even talking to your parents and family, because if you ever end up in a hospital brain dead, another thing that people don't realise is to be an organ donor, it's such a specific circumstance that happens. You've got to be brain dead in a hospital on life support. That's the only way you can be a donor. And I think that's only 1% of deaths in a year are in that situation. And then from that 1%, there's a certain percentage that do become a donor. So that just shows you how few people, first of all, are in a position to be a donor and then actually become a donor. But families are more likely to be comfortable with that decision if it's already been discussed with the parents, or they know that they have registered to become a donor, because then that's fulfilling the wishes of that person. But if they don't know, then I think the chances are that they will say no if it's brought up by the hospital.
What do you think just going through your experience and whatnot, what do you think the main reason is why people don't do it? Don't like tick the box on their driver's license, or sign up to anything? Do you think it's just purely awareness, or do you think there's a stigma attached to it at all?
I don't really know. I mean, I told my parents, actually, when I was in the Mater Hospital and I thought I was going to die, I said goodbye to my parents, and I said, I think we discussed, Mum said, what do you want done with your body? And I said, can you donate it to science? Because the way I said, when you're dead, why not put the body to some use? Like if some students can learn something from it, from my dead body, then good, something productive has come of, this physical shell, rather than it being cremated or buried. But imagine that instead of your body being, burn up, but actually from that you can save up to, I think it's between 6 and 9 lives. I don't know the statistics, but it's definitely more than 6, because there's heart, lung, kidney, pancreas. Yeah. And then there's tissue as well. There's a heart valve can be used. So
you could really be spread out across quite a few people if they're resourceful with your organs. Yeah.
Well, the donor, so my donors, I can't remember how many lives he saved, but I've got a feeling it's 5 or 6. And one of them, so you got 2 kidneys. I don't know what, there was a small boy whose life got saved. And so my donor, he had a son. So if you can imagine for his family, they know that, they can sort of look at his son and say, okay, someone else's son is alive because of him. Yeah.
You take whatever you can get, and I think in such a tragic situation for a family and everyone around a person who dies, you look for whatever sort of reassurance and peace of mind that you can get, and I think that's probably one of the best things that you could possibly have, is that person sort of, whether you think about it in a more spiritual sense or whatnot, I mean, that person still lives on, or definitely does physically, in other people, and as a result of something tragic, other people have survived due to it. Yeah. So, it's I guess it can be somewhat healing and therapeutic for the family who's had to experience it. I mean, definitely for both sides, but for that person that family that's had that sort of tragic incident to begin with, it's
actually what you asked before about why people don't want to do it. I actually just remembered I did hear a story about someone that wanted to donate their organs, but there was someone I was talking to recently, but she said that she just didn't want her eyes to be touched. I think you can. I think the corneas can be harvested.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So there's some things people just aren't comfortable with. Like, she didn't care about heart, lungs, kidneys, but for some reason she didn't want her eyes touched. And I don't understand that, because that's not, the way I think, but she does. And so I think with some people, maybe they just sort of see that their body as being, sacred, and that they don't want it being cut open and organs taken out.
I think it's sort of like the discussion that people have around whether they want to have their body buried or cremated, and some people go, I'd hate to be in a box in the ground rotting away, and then the other person's like, I'd hate to be in an oven, getting cremated, and both completely off the track straight away, because you're dead, so you're not going to know, and it's not going to matter what happens. You more or less, I mean, whatever you choose is more or less for what the rest of the family experiences. But I think we still attach ourselves to what the afterlife's going to be, and especially for people that are religious as well, there's probably a lot of additional stress and pressure put on it, because they feel that they're whatever what people call a soul or whatnot would be attached to the body even in death, and going through the fiery pits of hell in a crematorium. So,
yeah, when you look at the history of human civilization, we do tend to preserve the body. And like I remember when I was at Westminster Abbey, the kings had they're in a sarcophagus, but at the top was carving in stone of who was inside. So it's sort of this I think, trying to achieve immortality by keeping the physical form around for as long as possible, or trying to keep it in the minds of other people through a statue or a grave or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, well, we're weird people.
We're probably programmed to be like that. That's why there's such a desire to mate and have offspring. That's a form of immortality, passing on your genes to your children, and they keep the name too, keeping the family name going.
Absolutely. And I guess depending on what your perception is of the situation itself. I mean, being an organ donor, you could probably fulfill some of those internal instincts of being a human by having the peace of mind that part of you is going to continue on, at least for the foreseeable future, in another person, and that's probably good peace of mind for, as I said before, family and people that are close to that person that's no longer around. So yeah, I'll put a bunch of links up. I'll find some. What's the website called that people can go to register?
Just Donate Life. If you just did a search that, it'll be donatelife.gov.au, something like that. And I know there's a link where you can click and register, and you just fill in your details. There's check boxes to say what you're comfortable being donated, like which organ being donated, and if you want tissue to be donated as well.
Yeah. I'll put all the links up there, and I'll put the details for the charity race and the fundraiser that you've been a part of. And even if it gets to a point where someone's listening to this further on down the track, no doubt that link, at least for the foreseeable future, will still be active, so they can have a look and see what the final tally was that you've been able to rack up. What's it currently at the moment? Do you know?
Oh, I think it was like 5,500, something around there. So originally when I started it, I only put $500 on it, but I reached that in the first day. So I thought, okay, I'll aim to power 50 hours of research. And then when the organisers said that they were going to use my story for publicity for the event, I doubled that to 100 hours of research, which I really didn't expect to get, because some of the other fundraisers had corporate backing, and I thought I'll never be able to catch up with them. But my sister's friends in particular are quite generous, and a lot of people donated some big amounts, which I wasn't expecting at all. But yeah, it pushed me to the top. So,
yeah. Oh, well, congratulations on doing it. It's I think, given everything that you've been through, obviously there's a will there to make sure that but when it happens to other people down the track, that the process is there, and the facilities are there, and hopefully even down the track it's an even easier process.
Yeah. Well, I feel obligated to give back, because people have donated their time and given up their time to look after me, and the research that I'm trying to fund, it might not help me directly, but the next generation of transplant patients will benefit from it. And I've donated from those who have gone before me, if you know what I mean. So it's sort of a continual process of adding to the wealth of knowledge and advancing in medical science.
Absolutely. Oh, cool. I'll put all the links there, and people can check it out. And I might, if anyone's got any questions, they can leave some comments around the place, and I'll direct you to them if there's any particular questions you might be able to answer. And I think it's a pretty incredible story. And I mean, I had no idea. I had no idea that any of this happened, and to that extent, and that you pretty much were ready to go. So the fact that you got through it, and you are where you are now, and I assume that, as you said, like there's still a period of time where you've really sort of got to stay on top of everything and make sure that you're monitored and whatnot. But how are you tracking overall at the moment? I mean, it's been a little while since it's all happened.
Yeah, well, I'm, very science-minded, so I did a lot of research before, my transplant. So I sort of knew all the statistics, the survival rates, and what you had to do. And one of them is if you can get through the first year without any rejection, and that puts you on a good course for a good long-term survival rate.
Yeah.
If you get rejection in the first year, then your long-term survival is greatly diminished. So I was very conscious of not getting sick, making sure my medication was always taken on time and properly, and never forgetting, because you've got to keep the immune system suppressed. If it catches wind that there's foreign DNA living inside you, it'll try and kill it. And so, yeah, the main thing is making sure you're compliant with your medication. And then sort of the secondary thing is try not to catch anything, because I've got a suppressed immune system. If I get sick, it can be life-threatening. So, food poisoning can be life-threatening, and influenza and other things as well. So that's a constant side to the, life post-transplant that you've got to deal with.
Well, obviously a small price to pay for everything you've been through.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, cool, man. Well, I'll let you go, and thanks for chinwagging with me.
Yeah, no worries.
Thanks, team. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed that one. A bit of an intense episode, but definitely something that we should all be aware of, and a lot of lessons to take away from that. I think for anybody who hasn't been exposed or understands the whole process of organ and tissue donation, this is definitely, hopefully, an eye-opener for you, and an opportunity now to try and do the right thing by yourself and your family and the people that are close to you, and also, I guess, the wider community as well, to ensure that you've registered yourself and you've made sure that the people around you are well and truly aware that you would like to have your organs and tissue donated when you do pass on. And to be honest, look, it is a personal preference, and I'm sure there's a lot of different beliefs that have an impact on what that decision would be and those preferences. But my perspective on it is that you've got no use for any of your body parts once you do pass on. So probably best that you pass them on to somebody that can get some use out of them, rather than let it all rot in the ground or get it incinerated. So I will have a few links. I'll have a link to Sinclair's charity ride page, where he's raising money for further stem cell research, so that they can get to a point where they're harvesting organs and tissue. So that will alleviate a lot of the problems around the lack of donations out there in the community. If that, for whatever reason, that fundraiser is not still available, and more than likely for a lot of people listening further down the track it won't be, check out the link anyway, and you can see what the final figure was. There are a number of other initiatives and fundraisers around for the same sort of thing, so definitely do a search around the place. But I think at the very least, it's all about awareness and spreading the word amongst your family and your friends, and making sure that people are aware of what your intentions are in the event that you are not able to respond and not able to communicate what your preferences are when you do pass on. I'll also have, for Australian listeners, the online government registry for organ and tissue donation. So you can register on there, and there's actually a whole range of selection of different body parts and organs and tissue and whatnot that you can preference the ones that you would like to pass on. My personal recommendation would be that you just select all, because as I said before, they've got no use to you once you do move on. Now, I've recorded this outro quite some time after I actually did the episode and the intro, only because I was under the impression that Sedition no longer existed. That's Sinclair's band, but I've been pleasantly made aware that the band still does exist, just in the process of getting back out and becoming a live band again. But so what I'll do is I'll put links to the Sedition website, and including the web store. There are CDs and T-shirts available on there. I'll even link to one of my favorite songs from that last album of theirs that was released a few years ago now. So give it a shot. If you love melodic rock or melodic metal, you'll have a lot of sort of 80s influenced metal like Queensryche and and Maiden, and just trying to think of somebody else off the top of my head, even Judas Priest. Give this a shot. It might be up your alley. Hopefully you like it. And if you do, sling a few bucks Sinclair's way to grab the CD. I think there are some talks about having some shows in the near future, but as they are not confirmed, I won't put my foot in it and start carrying on about dates and anything like that. I'll leave that to Sinclair and the band to announce that when they're good and ready. But great to know that they're still up and running, and hopefully some more positive things coming from that end in the near future. Final couple of things. Housekeeping as always. Get onto iTunes if you use Apple and rate and review the podcast. If you're using the podcast app, it's really simple. Just go to the show page itself. You can click on the tab that says reviews, where you can see all the other reviews on there, and there's a link that you can actually write a review. So you first rate it out of 5 stars, then you can write a couple of words in there. So very easy process once you know how. So a couple of minutes of your time will be hugely beneficial to me. If you don't use Apple at all, then there is Stitcher. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I should actually go and find out whether you can do any sort of ratings on there, but I believe you can leave comments. So any sort of comments or feedback will be great for me. And I'm also on Omny now, so that's omny.com. For anybody that's familiar with that platform, the podcast is now on there, will be updated as new episodes are released. So very new to that, so I'm still trying to get my head around how it all works, but it's all about spreading the podcast on as many platforms as I can. So it's more of a trial and error on that platform, just to see what sort of impact it will have overall. So we'll just see how future episodes fare in that new neck of the internet woods. Also on YouTube, as always, so get on there. You can share those links, because I know most people prefer, well, I shouldn't say most people, but a lot of people prefer to use YouTube when they're listening to things. So you can get on there and share those links around, and by all means leave some comments on the episodes as well to make sure that they're all being active and looks like they're being interacted with. It definitely helps get a bit more exposure and more people listening to the podcast itself. And as always, all the stuff will be posted through the Facebook page as well, so you can listen to things there. But as a first base resource, andysocial.net has all the show notes for this episode and all episodes, has all the links to different platforms, and by all means let me know if there's any other areas in the internet that I should be airing this podcast as well. I'm all ears as always, and open to any suggestions that you guys might have. Final thing before I wrap up really quickly, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, the date for my little podcast party, which I've yet to give a proper name to, is May 28th, as I've mentioned previously, and the details have slightly changed. So it will be at the Fun Room at Frankie's Pizza by the Slice, which is in Sydney CBD, and now starts at 6 o'clock. You can get there a little bit earlier if you want to, but I have full usage of the Fun Room, which is a private bar that is normally open to the public from 9 p.m. onwards. But Jordan, who was on episode 32 of the podcast, has been very generous and opened this bar up for me for 3 hours before it normally opens to the public. So if you're interested, come on down. As I've said for the last several weeks, I'm not promoting this anywhere apart from through this podcast itself. So it's up to you guys whether you want to bring more people along with you. But it's for you guys, and it's just an opportunity to have a few drinks and talk shit for a few hours. I'll try and add some additional things along the way to make it a little bit more exclusive and special. But for the most part, it's just a casual meetup, and we can have a bit of fun. So more details as the weeks draw nearer, but definitely mark that in your calendars. So that'll be 6 p.m. on the 28th of May, which is a Saturday. I'll be at the Fun Room, which is one of the private bars at Frankie's Pizza by the Slice. So all those details I'll continue to convey through here. And if you need to know where addresses are or anything like that, use Google. But if for whatever reason there's any additional questions, just shoot me a message via the usual avenues that are out there in social media land. That's about it. I've got quite a few exciting guests coming up over the coming weeks. A hell of a lot of people I'm just trying to pencil in. It's very difficult to try and I guess, align everybody's schedules together, and I try and plan my week out to ensure I get as many people on as possible. But it is difficult. Everyone's quite busy, but that's partially why a lot of these people are quite interesting and unique, because they are busy people and they're doing something that's very different and exciting. So I'll continue to get those people recorded and get those people on the episodes for you guys to listen to. And as always, if there's any suggestions that you guys might have for future guests or anything to do with the podcast itself, I'm all about making this a wider community and having a lot more people involved in the podcast itself. So it's not just me crapping on and living in my own bubble. This is all about input and interaction with everybody that listens as well. So lots of exciting things in the pipeline that I've got planned, but I'm always open to continue to talk to other people that might have some suggestions or advice along the way as well. So until then, thank you so much for listening, and there will be another episode coming out very soon. Thanks, guys.
You're ready, social. You're ready.